Hey guys, it's Holly. So I know I just did a video, my first video of the KSW series for keeping Scientology working, and I said that alongside that I wanted to do the student hat, or what's called study tech. It's according to L. Ron Hubbard, it's how to learn, how to study, basically how to be a good student and learn shit. Um, doesn't really have that effect on people. It just kind of drives them crazy because of what they have to do. There's 376 pages here. A lot of them are blank. So we're going to be able to scroll past a few. But I'd figure we at least cover some of it, even if it's one or two policies. So we will start with the definition of a student. This was a board technical bulletin from 26th of October 1970, issue number 2. We got the definition of a student. A student is one who studies. He is an attentive and systematic observer. A student is one who reads in detail in order to learn and then apply. As a student studies, he knows that his purpose is to understand the material. He is studying by reading, observing, and demonstrating so as to apply them to a specific result. He connects what he's studying to what he'll be doing. This is from John Horwich, the Flag Class 8 course supervisor for L. Ron Hubbard. And he actually also wrote this next one. Now, mind you, yeah, here it says extracted from study tapes. L. Ron Hubbard made lectures. He spoke at these lectures, and that's where he was talking about study tech in the study tapes. So, we got the intention of a student from the 27th of October, 1970. The state of mind with which a student approaches study will determine the results the student gets from the study. The student must determine what he's going to do with the materials he is studying. He must determine what he's going to do with the information he's absorbing. If a student's intent is to study the materials so he can pass the exam, he will be very incapable of doing anything with the subject once the exam is over. He might be a great theoretician, but he will not be able to use the subject. Some students don't have any intention other than getting through the course. They're just there studying away. They balk at doing demos or clay or looking up words for their exact meaning. Even when forced to demonstrate something, they maintain the attitude that it has nothing to do with them. It's all very interesting to read, but... Non-involvement is the primary barrier in the ability to apply the materials of a course. There can be many reasons for study: points, exams, status, speed, glory, whatever. There's only one valid reason: studying for understanding, application, and practice. Now, this kind of sounds reasonable. It sounds reasonable to say that you study, obviously, to understand a subject, to apply it, and to practice it if it can be practiced, which a lot of them can. So, we got John Horwich again, the Flag Class 8 course supervisor for L. Ron Hubbard. Now let's head to the third student hat. Now we get our first technical bulletin. Obviously, it's written in red, from the 25th of June, 1971, revised 25th of November, 1974, from the HCO. This is Word Clearing Series 3R, Barriers to Study. There are 3 different sets of physiological and mental reactions that come from 3 different aspects of study. They are the 3 different sets of symptoms. 1. Education in the absence of the mass in which the technology will be involved is very hard on the student. It actually makes him feel squashed, makes him feel bent, sort of spinny, sort of dead, bored, exasperated. If he's studying the doingness of something in which the mass is absent, this will be the result. Okay, so Hubbard in this point is talking about studying something without having something to work with. I'm assuming he's going to mention... Yep, there it is. Okay. Hubbard likes to make verbs into nouns a lot of the time, and sometimes he does that by adding the suffix ness, N-E-S-S, at the end of that. So you'll have havingness, beingness, doingness, livingness. It's a Hubbard thing. So, he's saying that if someone is studying something that they cannot practice or interact with, they'll feel cramped. I don't get the logic of it, though. Obviously, I can understand that they're going to be bored, because if they have nothing to work with, what do they mean by bent, spinny, and dead? I can understand being bored or exasperated, but like I said, I can't understand what he means by bent or spinny. Dead, I mean, a lot of people say, I'm dead inside. And sometimes that can happen during schoolwork. So let's just keep moving on and see what he has to say. Photographs help, and motion pictures would do pretty good as they're a sort of promise or hope of the mass, but the printed page and the spoken word are not a substitute for a tractor if he's studying about tractors. You have to understand this data in its purity, and that is that educating a person in a mass that they don't have and which isn't available produces physiological reactions. That is what I'm trying to teach you. It's just a fact. You're trying to teach this fellow all about tractors, and you're not giving him any tractors. Well, he's going to wind up with a face that feels squashed, with headaches, and with his stomach feeling funny. He's going to feel dizzy from time to time, and very often his eyes are going to hurt. I want to understand where they're getting these symptoms, where they're figuring out, how do you explain to someone that your face feels squashed? How do you physically feel your face compressed just because you aren't working with the mass of something? Headaches, not necessarily caused by studying absent masses. With his stomach feeling funny, could be anxiety. He's going to feel dizzy from time to time. How do you feel dizzy while you're studying unless you have some kind of underlying medical condition? If any of you get that from studying, let me know. And very often his eyes are going to hurt. I could see eye strain being a thing, but not because of the fact that he's not working with something. It's a physiological datum that has to do with processing in the field of the mind. You could therefore expect the greatest incidence of suicide or illness in that field of education most devoted to studying absent masses. Wow, greatest incidence of suicide or illness. He says you can expect it. He didn't say that it's going to happen. I'd like to know where he's getting this from. How he's figuring this out without any kind of laboratory testing. This one of studying the something without its mass ever being around produces the most distinctly recognizable results. If a child felt sick in the field of study and it were traced back to this one, the positive remedy would be to supply the mass, the object, or a reasonable substitute, and it would clear it up. So just by providing a mass, you can get rid of someone's sickness. Not because it's a virus or because they're actually sick with something. No, it's just because they're not working with the mass. That is one of the stupidest things I've ever fucking heard. There's another series of physiological phenomena that exist which is based on the fact of too steep a study gradient. That's another source of physiological study reaction because of too steep a gradient. It's a sort of confusion or a reelingness that goes with this one. You've hit too steep a gradient. How many times are you going to say too steep a gradient? There was too much of a jump because he didn't understand what he was doing and he jumped to the next thing and that was too steep and he went too fast and he will assign all of his difficulties to this new thing. He bit off more than he could chew. Now differentiate here because gradients sounds terribly like the third one of these study hang-ups, definitions, but remember that they're quite distinctly different. Gradients are more pronounced in the field of doingness, but they still hang over into the field of understanding. In gradients, however, it's the actions we're interested in. We have a plotted course of forward motion of actions. We find he was terribly confused on the second action he was supposed to do. We must assume that he never really got out of the first one. So again, this is part of this seems kind of related to what we're going to cover in the next one, which I already have an idea about. Kind of not being able to move forward because you didn't understand something previously. Now, I can understand that applying to some things in study, but not others. We must assume then that he never really got out of the first one. The remedy for this one of too steep a gradient is cutting back. Find out when he was not confused on the gradient, then what new action he undertook to do. Find what action he understood well. Just before he was all confused, what did he understand well, and then we find out that he didn't understand it well. It's really at the tail end of what he understood, and then he went over the gradient, you see. It's the most recognizable and most applicable in the field of doingness. That's the gradient barrier, and one full set of phenomena accompanies that. There's a third one, an entirely different set of physiological reactions brought about through a bypass definition. A bypass definition gives one a distinctly blank feeling or a washed-out feeling. A not there feeling and a sort of nervous hysteria will follow in the back of that. The manifestation of blow, which means leaving without notice, stems from this third aspect of study, which is the misunderstood definition or the not comprehended definition, the undefined word. That's the one that produces the blow. The person does not necessarily blow on these other two. They're not pronouncedly blow phenomena. They're simply physiological phenomena. This one of the misunderstood definition is so much more important. It's the makeup of human relations, the mind, and subjects. It establishes aptitude and lack of aptitude, and it's what psychologists have been trying to test for years without recognizing what it was. It's the definitions of words, the misunderstood word. That's all it goes back to, and that produces such a vast panorama of mental effects that it itself is the prime factor involved with stupidity and the prime factor involved with many other things. If a person didn't have misunderstoods, his talent might or might not be present, but his doingness would be. We can't say that Joe would paint as well as Bill if both were unaberrated, unmessed up, or undisturbed in the field of art, but we can say that the inability of Joe to paint compared with the ability of Joe to do the motions of painting is dependent exclusively and only upon definitions. Exclusively and only upon definitions. There's some word in the field of art that the person who's inept didn't define or understand, and that's followed by an inability to act in the field of the arts. That's very important because it tells you what happens to doingness, and that the restoration of doingness depends only upon the restoration of understanding on the misunderstood word, misunderstood definition. This is a very fast processing. There's a very swift, wide, big result obtainable in this. It has a technology which is a very simple technology. It enters in at the lower levels because it has to. This doesn't mean it's unimportant. It means it has to be at the entrance gates of Scientology. It is a sweepingly fantastic discovery in the field of education, and don't neglect it. You can trace back the subject a person is dumb in, or any allied subject that got mixed up with it. The psychologist doesn't understand Scientology. He never understood a word in psychology, so he doesn't understand Scientology. Where are you? Why are you? I get you don't like psychology, but why are you pulling it into study tech, and why are you saying that you automatically know that he doesn't understand the subject that he fucking studied in? He has a degree. He clearly understood it. He doesn't understand Scientology. Yeah, he probably doesn't understand Scientology because he's not a member of the cult. And he's not under these... He wouldn't even be a psychologist if he understood Scientology and was a part of it, because they don't like psychology. Well, that opens the gate to education. Although I've given this one of the misunderstood definition last, it's the most important one, L. Ron Hubbard. All right, so these are just the first couple policies and bulletins of the student hat. We're only on page 15. There's 376 pages in total. We got a lot to cover, and we are going to cover it. We're going to go through the entire student hat. I found this on that same website that I mentioned before, the one where I found the volumes. Actually, did I find... Yes, I did. I did find that on the volumes website. I'll put the link in the description again, but just to be clear, we went over it. The 3 barriers to study now that we know them, according to L. Ron Hubbard, not according to the real world, are absence of mass, the too steep a gradient, and the misunderstood word or bypass definition. But saying that the misunderstood word or the undefined word is the one reason that produces someone, that makes someone leave a subject, sounds crazy to me. I'm assuming it sounds crazy to all of you too. A sort of nervous hysteria will follow in the back of that. A washed out feeling, a not there feeling. All this is subjective. So basically they're saying is, if you don't understand something currently, go back to what you understood and find the word you misunderstood. Find the word that you didn't know the full definition of. Which is like why I said earlier, you're going to be spending more of your time buried in dictionaries, Scientology dictionaries, than you are inside of your Scientology books or your study materials. We're going to cover the next policy, which is under clearing words. So obviously you can see the student hat is a mix of a bunch of different policy series and bulletins. So we're going to cover clearing words next time. I know this was a very short video compared to the KSW video, but we were able to cover a few bulletins in a shorter period of time. They were very short, and there wasn't really much to discuss. We're going to find out a lot more about this, and we're actually going to go over the word clearing series later. We're going to go over as many series as I possibly can. So we're going to go through these two, and then we're going to be done with that, and then we're going to go through the next two, and then be done with those, and repeat. But I want to thank you guys for watching this. I appreciate you sticking around while I start this Scientology binge on my channel. I hope you guys could all learn something. And like I said, next time we'll be covering clearing words, which is basically just defining words and figuring out what they mean. Comment if you liked the video, if you think there's anything that should be changed, like it if you did, if you didn't, whatever. Subscribe if you want to be notified of my future uploads. And I will talk to you guys later. All right? See ya.